As some of you know, years ago I was an adjunct faculty member on the Atlanta campus of Mercer University. I went there to teach political science and American government courses to supplement my rather meager clergy salary. The bishop had talked me into coming to Atlanta and starting a new congregation from scratch. And from scratch is what I was being paid. At the school I was approached by the administration and offered the opportunity to take part in a new and experimental program. The program was called Pell Grants, named after a congressman, I believe from Rhode Island. Pell Grants were given to encourage and make possible college education for those who would not otherwise be able to afford them. Legislation was subsequently amended to make provision as part of the rehabilitation of incarcerated people. The way this worked out was that Mercer provided staff at the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary for inmates to take courses for credit working toward a degree. And hopefully with a degree they would be better able to maintain a straight life when they got out. So 2 nights a week I taught at the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. Initial class of about 12 or 15 students. This was at a time in the aftermath of the Bay of Pigs fiasco, in which the Atlanta Penitentiary also housed a large number of Cubans. One of my students was asked, outside of the classroom, was asked for a cigarette by a Cuban prisoner, and when he would not give him one, the Cuban prisoner stabbed him with a pair of scissors that he had stolen. So this was not a very calm environment. It's an interesting 3 years that I was there. But I got to know a lot of prisoners. I got to learn a lot about crime and punishment. And in our gospel for this morning, it raised some old thoughts and some old ideas. Eventually the Pell Grants, I think they're still around. I see you nodding, they are. But they have been taken away from prisoners, which I find rather interesting, since it was a good rehabilitation tool, but for some reason Congress decided not to do that. Our philosophy, and of those behind the program or in opposition to the program, was you do the crime, you do the time, and make it as miserable as possible. And somehow you are to be transformed in that process if you are a prisoner. It just didn't work that way. But it came to mind this morning when I read the gospel for this week about the 2 men who come to the temple to pray. Jesus has traveled from the north country with his followers. They have come to the holiest place in all of Israel, the temple in Jerusalem. It is there that are housed the tablets of stone with the 10 commandments. It is there that the high priest finds his house. It is there that the scholars interpret the law for the people and proclaim that on the steps of the temple. The high altar is the holiest place in all of Israel. Jesus takes his disciples there and shows to them and tells them about 2 men who come to the temple to pray. One is the epitome of righteousness, the good citizen who does everything that we hope good citizens do. He stands before the high altar and recites his accomplishments, if you will. Listen to what he says. I tithe, I fast, I'm not an adulterer, I'm not like other people. I remember a long time ago reading that portion of the gospel and thinking, get him on the best thing. Get him on the best thing. But there's a sense of truth in that. Those are the people that we elect. Those are the people we choose. Those are the people we think are righteous. Those good, upstanding folks. And it goes on to say, there stood the tax collector. Tax collectors, in essence, were traitors. They were people who sold out to the occupying forces. They won the right to collect taxes. And as long as they turned in the due amount, they kept their jobs. So what they did was they taxed over and above the required tax, and that was their take-home. They're crooks, thieves, traitors. And there stands this one before the high altar, admitting every single bit of it, and saying, Lord, have mercy on me. I'm afraid that the story loses some of its impact for us modern folks. We don't really grasp how shocking it is. Our tax collectors are anonymous. The bill arrives, we write the checks, and hopefully they don't bounce. I recently had a terrible experience. My accountant had a fatal heart attack. Died in his sleep at a rather too young age. His firm was handling our taxes, and they forgot or overlooked or somehow didn't submit a quarterly paper. So I was contacted by the IRS and had to pay a $5,000 fine. So it is still with us. I can tell you well, I won't go into what I said about the law. It is now straightened out. But after months of haggling, worrying, so what Jesus is showing us is it's in a different time and a different place, but it is just as frightening, just as inconvenient as it was then. So in his story this morning, there's the two men standing before the high altar. One the righteous good citizen and the other a crook. Notice that our righteous one does not pray. He does not ask God for anything. He gives God a report on how good he is. Does not commit adultery. He pays what he should. He's generous. He gives 10%. He tithes. Not just, and he makes it very clear, not just on income, he tithes on everything he has. No wonder we want people like that on the vestry. But he's a crook. He's not a crook. He's the good guy. The crook's next to him. He has nothing with which he can defend himself. a lowlife. He's guilty and he knows it. And we don't know why his guilt has gotten the better of him to drive him to the temple, to stand before that altar and to offer the prayer, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. We can hear this parable as a parable about humility, but I don't think that's what it's really about. It's not about being proud like the Pharisee, that we should go home and be humble and dutifully pay our taxes. No, it's not what it's about. It's all about grace. It's all about asking God for forgiveness and God granting forgiveness. You see, we ask the wrong questions in this parable. We ask, what do we have to do? How do we become worthy enough to receive God's blessings? And the answer is you can't. You can't. That Pharisee in Jesus' parable thinks that he has the answer in his religious observance. He fasts, he prays, he tithes, he lives an upright life. And for that, God will reward him. God will bless him. The truth of the matter is, none of us and none of them are worthy enough to earn God's grace. If I need to earn God's grace, then I will have to be better than the other guy. And that's not what it's about. You see, the key question is not about how much do I owe or what must I do. The key question that we each have to ask is, do you love me? Do you love me? And God's reply is a resounding and forever yes. Yes.